Hello viewers. Today let's discuss about how different social groups participated in the civil disobedience movement and limitations of the civil disobedience movement of your history chapter 3, Nationalism in India. First we have here how participants saw the civil disobedience movements, means how different social groups in India participated, what were their motives in participating civil disobedience movement. Here I have listed here different social groups. First, let's discuss about the rich peasants. Why did the rich peasants join the civil disobedience movement? Now, the rich peasants were producers of commercial crops and they were interested in making profits, and they also made huge amount of profits. Now, rich peasants communities, there were various communities such as the Jats of UP and the Patidars of Gujarat. Mainly, they produces commercial crops. But during the time of Great Depressions of the world, it was also felt in India. So, due to overproductions, there were reduction in the prices of the food grains, and they were also hard hit by the effects of the great economic depressions of the world. They wanted the government to reduce the revenue rate. They found it difficult to pay the revenue rate, so they appealed the government to reduce the revenue rates, but the government denied. That's why they got angry against the government and they joined the civil disobedience movement, hoping that Swaraj would bring reductions in their revenue rate. So, why did the rich peasants join civil disobedience movement? The rich peasants joined the civil disobedience movement. Mainly, they thought that Swaraj would bring them reductions in their revenue rates. Now, when the civil disobedience movement was launched, they took much enthusiasm and they organized their communities, and those who were not willing to join, those members who were not willing to join the civil disobedience movement, they forced them to join also. But we know that Gandhiji suspended civil disobedience movement when it turned violence. At that time when the suspension was done, their revenue rate was not revised. That's why they slowly they lost their interest in civil disobedience movement. When civil disobedience movement started for a second time in 1932, many of the rich peasants, they were unwilling to join the civil disobedience movement. Now this is about rich peasants. Now let's go to poor peasants. Why did the poor peasants join the civil disobedience movement? Now the poor peasants, they wanted not only reductions in their revenue rate, they found it difficult to pay the rent charges to the landlords also. Okay, mainly due to this, they wanted remissions of their rent charges. They wanted the rent charges to be paid to the landlords to be remitted. That's why they joined the civil disobedience movement. Okay, so the poor peasants joined the civil disobedience movement because they wanted their revenue rate to be reduced, and not only that, they also wanted their rent charges to be remitted. Now, but what happened was that the Congress were not willing to accept the demands of the poor peasants, that no rent campaign, because the Congress thought that if they agreed their demands to include their demands of no rent campaign of the poor peasants, then it would alienate these landlords and the rich peasants from the Congress. Okay, the rich peasants and the landlords would get angry and would alienate from the Congress. That's why they were not unwilling to accept the demands of the poor peasants. The poor peasants not only joined the civil disobedience movement, but they also joined certain other movement started by communist and the socialist movement, because according to the idea of socialism or socialist ideas, there should be no private property, and property should be owned by the state or the public, and there should be equitable distribution of this property or the resources. So they liked the idea, so they joined this many socialist and the communist movement also. So this is about poor peasants. Okay, so next let's go to merchants and the industrialists, that is the businessmen. Why did the merchants and the industrialists join the civil disobedience movement? The merchants and the industrialists, businessmen, they joined the civil disobedience movement because they wanted the restrictions which was put on their business activities by the colonial government to be removed. Okay, they did not want any restrictions on their business activities to be put by the colonial government. That's why they joined the civil disobedience movement. Now, these merchants and the industrialists during the First World War, okay, when the First World War was going on, okay, they made huge profit because when the war was going on, the British government was busy with the war activities going on mainly in Europe, and they were busy with the productions of this arms and ammunition and recruitment of soldiers and so on. Okay, and this business or this industry, okay, business or Indian industry flourished a lot, and these people made huge profit. So they became powerful when the war was going on. Afterwards also, they started attacking the colonial control on their business activities. They wanted these restrictions on their business activities to be removed, and they also wanted the restriction to be put on the imported goods. Okay, if the restrictions were put on the imported goods, okay, coming inside, then they could sell easily their products inside India and they could make the profit. That's why they did not like these imported goods. Okay, now not only that, they also wanted a rupee sterling foreign exchange ratio that would restrict these imported goods. Now, these businessmen, okay, their leaders, top leaders like Thakudars and G.D. Birla, under their leaderships, they formed various organizations. Namely, in 1920, they formed this Indian Industrial and Commercial Congress. 1927, they formed Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industries, okay, under the leadership of Thakudars and G.D. Birla. And these industrialists, they attacked the colonial control on our Indian economy. So, not only that, they also give financial assistance during the time of civil disobedience movement. They were powerful, they were having money, so they gave financial assistance, and since they were against these foreign goods, they also joined the campaign in boycotting these foreign goods. Now, but what happened, see, when the Round Table Conference failed, okay, when the Round Table Conference that was held in London, when the negotiation broke down, when their demands were not met, okay, see, they lost their enthusiasm. Not only that, many factors were there which made them lose their enthusiasm towards the civil disobedience movement. One was that the negotiation broke down in London. And the next factor was that these ideas of socialism, okay, were liked by the new leaders. I told before also, the Congress were dominated by the new leaders, that the radicals, and the radicals, okay, they were ready to accept these ideas of socialism, which the businessmen did not like. And this business person, they also thought that because of the movement, many militant activities might grow in different parts of India that might hinder their business progress. That's why, okay, they lost this enthusiasm towards the civil disobedience movement. Okay. Otherwise, they were hoping that Swaraj, because of Swaraj, okay, their business activities would prosper and trade and industry would flourish, and their restriction would be removed. Okay. Now, next, let's go to workers. Why did the workers join the civil disobedience movement? Okay. Now, there are different types of workers are there. Most of the workers, they hesitate to join the civil disobedience movement because this Congress were near to the merchants and the industrialists. Okay, so these merchants and the industrialists, okay, we know that they were giving financial assistance to the Congress. They were powerful, and the Congress also welcomed them okay, very much. That's why the workers stay far from the Congress. But some workers did join the civil disobedience movement, mainly in the Nagpur regions, okay, the workers were joining the civil disobedience movement. And let's see, railway workers and dock workers also joined the civil disobedience movement, and workers in Chota Nagpur mines, those who were working in mines, okay, they also joined civil disobedience movement. They wore Gandhian caps and boycotted foreign goods, and also joined the rallies and protests. Why did they join the civil disobedience movement? Some of the workers, okay, they joined civil disobedience movement hoping that their wages would be increased. Swaraj would bring them increase in their wages, and also their working conditions would be improved. Okay, since their working conditions were very low, okay, they wanted their working conditions to be improved. Because of these two reasons, okay, increase in their wages and improvement in their working conditions, that's why they joined this civil disobedience movement. Okay, different people join, different groups of social groups join civil disobedience movement, okay, for various reasons. Now, why? Okay, lastly we have what? These women also participated in civil disobedience movement. Women, okay, they participated. Many women, okay, they participated in civil disobedience movement, hoping that it was their sacred duty to serve the country. Now, after hearing the salt law was broken by Gandhiji, many women came out of their house, started manufacturing salt, and they also joined this boycotting of foreign goods and picketing of liquor, and many of them went to jail also. Most of the women belong to rich families, okay, from the urban, both from the urban and the rural areas. Okay, from families from the high caste groups, and also family from the rich peasants. Okay, so many women belong to the rich families. But although the Congress welcomed them, they were reluctant to give any women, okay, in a position of authority for many years. And Gandhiji also thought that it is the sacred duty of the women to serve their children and husband and look after the family and the heart. Okay, so this is about the women. So we have seen that different groups participated in the civil disobedience movement: rich peasants, poor peasants, these industrialists and merchants, workers, and women. These were the different social groups which participated in the civil disobedience movement. Now, next we have here the limits of civil disobedience. What were the limitations of civil disobedience movement? We would be discussing mainly about the Dalit and the Muslims. Now, who were these Dalits? Dalits were the people, okay, poor people. They were also called untouchable before, and they were, because due to their poverty, they did certain odd kinds of jobs, like this cleaning the sweeping the roads and cleaning the drains, okay, etc. And these high caste Brahmins, okay, they called them this by the name untouchables. Gandhiji did not like, okay, to be called untouchables to the Dalits. He called the Dalits Harijans, as Harijans means children of God. But according to the Congress, okay, the Congress did not want to include this Dalit. Okay. Why did the Congress did not want to include Dalit? Because they thought that those who are already there inside the Congress, okay, high caste Hindus, the Sanatanis, okay, including the Dalits, would be offending to them, would be obnoxious to them, okay, and they would get angry and they would be alienated from the Congress. Okay, so because the Congress thought that because of these businessmen, because of these high caste Hindus, okay, their anti-imperial forces were stronger. That's why they did not want to alienate them also. Okay, but Gandhiji was against these ideas. Gandhiji organized satyagraha for the Dalit people, because they were not allowed to enter the temple or use these public places or tap water or tanks, draw water from the taps or tanks. Okay, so in order to let them, okay, use all these things, he also organized satyagraha movement. Now, but what happened? The Dalit also started forming their own groups, okay, and the leaders of the Dalits, okay, they started, okay, thinking that only through political empowerment their sufferings would be ended. They started okay, to demand separate electorates and these reserved seats in the educational institutions. Now, afterwards, see, Dr. Ambedkar, okay, Dr. Ambedkar formed a depressed class association in 1930, okay, for the Dalits. Okay, he organized the Dalits and formed an association called the Depressed Class Association in 1930. And he was also present in the Round Table Conference in London. Now, in London, okay, when the Round Table Conference was held, this Dr. Ambedkar clashed with Mahatma Gandhi because their ideas were antagonistic. Ambedkar demanded a separate electorates for the Dalits, which Mahatma Gandhi never liked, because if separate electorates are given to the Dalits, according to Gandhiji, that would slow the process of integration of Dalits into the society. The Mahatma Gandhi did not want the Dalit to be looked as separate, okay, separate group, okay, lowest rank like that. He wanted them to be among the general mass. That's why Mahatma Gandhi was against the idea of separate electorates. But since Dr. Ambedkar demanded, and the British also agreed to Dr. Ambedkar's demand, okay, the British conceded to Dr. Ambedkar's demands of separate electorate. After that, Gandhiji decided to fast unto death. Seeing his conditions, okay, finally Dr. Ambedkar again agreed to sign up this pact with Gandhiji known as Pune Pact. So in the year 1932, Pune Pact was signed. So according to this pact, okay, it was agreed that this separate seats, okay, reservation would be given in the central and the provincial, okay, legislature to the Dalits, but the elections would be elected by the general mass, common mass, not by the separate electorate. So it was agreed, and Pune Pact was signed in year 1932. So this is about the Dalits. Now next let's go to the Muslims. Okay, the Muslims' participation in the civil disobedience movement was also limited, because we know that after this non-cooperation Khilafat movement ended, okay, the Muslim League got separated from this Congress, and the Congress slowly the Congress was dominated by Hindu. Okay, it was seen visibly from outside also. Many Hindus, mainly Mahasabha leaders, okay, entered inside the Congress, and due to these reasons, there was more alienations between the Muslim and the Hindus, and in many parts of India also there were riots and clashes between Hindus and the Muslim, communal riots. Okay. But the Congress and the Muslim League, okay, they were always trying to put together, to bring together these Hindus and Muslims together. So, before the Muslims, just like this Dalits, the Muslim also started demanding separate electorates for them, okay, which the Congress and other party did not like. But finally what happened, they tried to bring negotiation. Okay, in 1928, this all party conference was held and tried to bring negotiation. One of the Muslim leader of the Muslim League, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, was ready to give up this idea of separate electorates in case, okay, these Muslims were given these reserved seats in the central legislature and also in the Muslim representation in the Muslim-dominated provinces like Bengal and the Punjab. If these things were given, then they were ready to give up the idea of the separate electorate. Okay, so negotiation was going on. In 1928, there was All India party conference going on, but the negotiation fell. Okay, when Hindu Mahasabha leader, one of the Hindu Mahasabha leader, this Jayankar, he strongly disagreed this idea. Okay, so when civil disobedience movement started in 1930, there was always fear of suspicion and distrust, mainly between these two communities, Hindus and the Muslims. The Muslims felt that since they were minority in India, Okay, afterwards, what would happen to their fate afterwards? Their identity and culture might be submerged, might be lost under the domination of Hindu majority. Okay, that's why there was distrust between the two communities. So this is the end of this. Okay, the limits of civil disobedience movement. Okay.